Perfect time to check in with the Tiger manager, A.J. Hinch. A.J., good morning.
Good morning. How you guys doing?
Good. Great to hear you.
Yeah, good to hear from you guys. It's been baseball season for a while now. I know you guys just said it's the sweet spot, but we've been going at it.
Well, it's the sweet spot because the games will actually mean something. And I know when we ask you this, you always say, well, it's one of 162. But, yeah, we'll finally get a chance to see baseball here in Detroit because we actually do have good weather right now.
Oh, really? Nice. We have, hopefully you can dial that up for the first homestand after the West Coast swing. If you can guarantee that, that'd be awesome. So Miggy's in town. And it always brings back the idea that opening day where it snowed and he went oppo and slid into second. So we don't need another snow day on opening day.
Yeah. I actually had a Miggy question. I'll just ask it here. It's a two-parter. Does he have a future in coaching, and can you confirm that he is in the best shape of his life for spring training?
Well, I mean, Miggy can do whatever Miggy wants. It's fun to have him around. He spent a lot of time with his family. You know, he came in and if you think about the culture of our team and just the story around us the last 12 months, he's one of the few guys that saw Comerica packed and saw Comerica during playoff runs and World Series and things that this team aspires to be. And so, you know, he came in and he was so proud of our group last year. And, you know, it's a different team than when he retired. We have a few new players. There are obviously some guys that played with him, but you know, having him around and lobbing a few coaching things and just his laugh and you know, this is the happiest he is in spring training. This is not the same version as a player when he just wanted to get to the season, but I love having him here to mentor, you know, our young kids in PD or our guys around the big leagues that recognize him as one of the all-time greats.
Let's talk Spencer Torkelson. You know, he had a home run yesterday, so he's top of mind. Spring this year, much different than last year. What's so different with him right now?
Well, I think his confidence is growing, which is good. I think he realized he's fighting to make this roster. That always, you know, brings out a lot of good things in players. And then, you know, some of the subtle adjustments, you know, it does take, you know, sort of a trained eye to look at the stance, the athleticism, the approach, the way he's talking about hitting, the way that, you know, he's balancing sort of his search to hit the ball hard, but also for power. All of that has been taken into the games. And so he's gone oppo, he went pull side. It's been a late count. He's come off of bad at bats and been a productive hitter. And, you know, I kind of love the edge that he's playing with, you know, in his own little methodical way. He's just focused on the things that he can control, and he's trying to make this team. So I don't know if any or all of that is different. There's a maturation process for these hitters, but it's certainly been fun to watch him, you know, come in and push to be the best player he can be all the way in the spring, and not just like quote unquote prepare for the season. He's got to try to make this team.
Has he done enough to be able to trust the production? How do you measure what he's done in spring training versus what you've seen in previous years?
You know, it's actually a really good topic that I'll try to explain. It's because I think it's all in the eye of the beholder, right? So when you look at a player and a guy has a terrible spring, if you like the player, you're like, oh, it's just the spring. He's going to be fine during the season. If you're critical of the player, and I mean all of us, it's like, oh my God, and, you know, the alarm bells go off. And on the flip side, if somebody really goes off during the spring, you know, if you're kind of, you know, interested in that player being on your team, you can say like he's turned the corner. And if you don't, it's like, oh, it's just spring training. So I think you got to be careful with spring evaluation, but at the same time, what's a player to do other than go and do his best and perform and see where it goes? I mean, the real challenges are going to be during the season for all these guys. But I'd rather guys be doing well than scuffling in the spring. I mean, that's what we're here for. You
mentioned the difference in the roster when we asked about Miguel Cabrera, that it's a different roster now. How are the roster decisions different this year for you as you approach the end of spring training versus previous seasons that you've been here in Detroit?
Yeah, so I think the names have changed. You know, there are some guys that have come to spring the last couple of years and known they've been on the team, and now they're fighting for roster spots. I think the depth is really, really good. I mean, we're not going on like a spring ERA, ranking system or a batting average ranking system. I mean, we're going to need to put together the best team that we can take to LA, and that might align with spring training performance. It might not, but I think the names are different. I think the specific positions that we're trying to fill are a little bit different. I mean, the rotation guys are pitching awesome. Casey Mize has been great. Kenta has made some adjustments. Cater Montero, has great stuff. And when he locks it in the strike zone, he's shown some dominant things. Jackson Jobe has been everything is advertised. So that's 4 guys for 2 spots in the rotation, and that in itself shows the strength of the depth of this team. And then lastly, I think we're going to need to make some calls at the end of spring based on injury. We know Matt Vierling's going to miss, some of the season. We're still holding out hope that this nerve wakes up with Parker Meadows and he's able to put together a good week and a half of spring training and get himself to LA. That's undetermined, which leaves a lot of decisions on, the bench bats or who's playing the outfield or who's playing in center field, things like that may not be resolved until we get to those exhibition games in San Francisco.
You mentioned the rotation, and there's only a couple spots for more than a couple guys. With Jackson Jobe, does he have to be a starter to make the team, or would you take him even in a bullpen role, kind of like he was at the end of last season?
Yeah, we see him as a starter. And I think the best thing for him, when he came to the bullpen last year, that was a unique experience. It was the playoffs, and we were trying to make the playoffs. And, when we talked about having the biggest impact that we could have, Jackson has some of the best stuff on our team. So we put him in the pen, and I told him then, this could be the one snippet in your career where you're in the bullpen. I hope it is. And so this spring, it's been entirely a conversation about the rotation, and I don't see it changing, for the beginning of the season. If he makes his team, it's going to be in the rotation, and he'll pitch, towards the back end of the rotation. If he doesn't, it's because that we feel like the rotation is better a different way, and he needs things to work on. So it's been rotation only.
When you look at the prospects of starting the season, as you mentioned, without Vierling and possibly without Parker Meadows, what are some of the combinations you may use in center field and just in terms of the lineup to make things, as you mentioned, productive? Right.
Well, I think the first thing, we'll wait for Parker and see where that's at. In the meantime, Wenzel Perez, who's had a little bit of back stiffness, and because of Parker being out up to this date and Vierling being out to start the season, we're treating Wenzel with a ton of patience and being uber cautious. So he's going to get some time in center field. Riley Green played center yesterday. He'll play center today. It's not a position that I'm going to want to just turn over to him. Either way, with Parker's playing, then obviously he's playing center field. If Parker doesn't make the season, we'll have to make determination how much center field that we're going to push Riley to do. So those 2 guys are going to get a ton of action. I've put Ryan Kreidler out there and Jahmai Jones, 2 guys trying to make trying to make the team. Those guys, could possibly fill in, but a lot of it just centers around the Parker decision first on whether he can make the season or not, and then we'll adjust accordingly. But some combination of those other 4 players if Parker's unavailable.
Talking to Tiger manager A.J. Hinch this morning, 2 weeks out from their first game of the season. Javi Baez. Nobody gets a more visceral reaction on talk radio than Javi. What are you seeing with his hip? Is he slated to be the everyday shortstop at this point?
So, into the first part, what I'm seeing with his hip is that he's feeling better and better every day. Some of that is physically, and I think some of it is mentally. He had a surgery that he had to rehab, and now we got to get him away from rehab and into just playing, with freedom and knowing. Now he's slid and he's dove after a ball, and he's fully rotated at the plate. Like, he's been cleared and has no limitations at all. And we'll see where that takes him. Now, as far as the second part, is he the everyday shortstop? And I think the answer is to be determined. But I can tell you, like, today he's playing third base, which is going to be new for everybody, but not new to Javi. Javi did that, a few years back when he was one of the best, almost original players moving around the field playing at an all-star caliber level. So we're going to introduce a few positions. We introduced a few positions to him. It's going to start today when the lineup comes out. He's playing third, Sweeney's playing short. There is room on the roster for both. And I'm going to play the best guy. And I think that's been something I've been very consistent about at the shortstop position. Obviously, Javi was hurt last year. Trey came up and did a really, really nice job. So it's to be determined how that's all, divvied up, so to speak, but it's going to be divvied up by quality of play. And everybody knows it. And I think it's been a good camp for Javi. It's been nice to see him, sort of happy and healthy and doing the things that we need. And now we need better performance out of him and others to make these decisions moving forward. The thing that I caution against for everybody, and I know in baseball there's this, who's the everyday this, who's the everyday that, and I think this team, the way we've shown the last year plus, is we're willing to put any combination out there to help us win that day's game, and that mentality is not going to change.
First base with Colt Keith, how has he made the transition? What are you seeing from him, and how confident are you that he is going to be able to be that everyday first baseman?
Colt, you talking about Colt?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's been really good. I mean, the glove is big, the adjustments are there. I tried to caution everybody that there was going to be a learning curve, and that it was okay for him to make a few mistakes down here. He actually hasn't made as many mistakes as I think I would have expected, just sort of like dropping a guy at first base for the first time in his career. He's naturally done some really good things, and then there's been a couple of reads and some depth issues, like things that even in a box score you're not going to see, that we're continuing to, it's the timing on crashing on a pick play from Jake Rogers. It's coming off the bag at a certain angle to give yourself the right hop, when a runner is on first. So not everything is sort of dictated to the ball hit to him. There's a lot for him to learn, positioning himself when a ball's coming from Jace at third versus Sweeney at short versus Glaber at second. Those are all new things, and I know it sounds sort of coach speak, and it sounds like I'm focused on small things, but that's really what's going to make him comfortable. And he's been great. He's put in a ton of work. He and Miggy, I think, are going to work a little bit today, which is one of the reasons Miggy's in town. And Joey's been pretty relentless at his routine. So I have a ton of confidence in Colt in general, but he will figure out this position as we go. And then depending on how the roster is built, for the rest of the balance of the roster, like, is Jahan factoring in? Where is Torque on this roster? Who else? Andy played first yesterday on the back end because in-game moves, as we've shown, is, sometimes guys end up in different positions.
Yeah, that's actually the last thing I wanted to ask you about is kind of a roster projection question. As Torkelson hits, as Jahan hits, they're both right-handed bats. They can both DH first base. Jahan's played the outfield. Can they both make the team, or do you have to take one or the other?
No, I think so. I mean, I think the combination, first off, the opening day is the first deadline, right? Like, it's the first time where you have to declare, like, these are our 26. And so depending on our health, depending on who we're facing, I'm guessing we're going to get Blake Snell in that first series. I'm guessing we're going to get, the Martin Perez, Max Fried, Carlos Rodon in the first homestand. I don't know what we're going to do yet. They're in not knowing if Parker's coming back soon, if he doesn't make the roster and comes back soon, does he start the roster, but we need to protect him? Like, those are going to determine the balance of the roster. But to answer your question, yes, I think there's a roster that can be made with both those guys. And while imperfect on the defensive front, it might help us offensively to combat some of the left-handed pitching that we're going to face, and then we can correct it along the way if it needs to change. I mean, we have depth, and we don't have to commit to a team on the first day of the season being the team for the rest of the season. And we're gonna take into account, how we can go series by series and put together the best team.
AJ, we'll talk to you again when the games are for real. We can't wait. Thank you.
You got it.
Yep.
I
Thanks.
appreciate you guys. See you.
Tiger manager AJ Hinch. It's 97.1.